Can everyone hear me?
Right. I want to just welcome everyone to the AACG meetup. This is September the 10th, 2021. We've been doing this. This is our second year of doing this. And our guest artist today is Raven Skyriver, who I first saw work at the Glass Art Society conference at Corning, where he was making this amazing turtle, which I'm sure he will show today. It's now in the Habitat 50th for sale. But his gaffer was Martin Yaneski. But I was just taken by Raven Skyriver and his work. So I want to welcome you, Raven, and thank you for joining the AACG meetup. And I'm going to basically turn it over to you. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Marilee. Thanks for having me, and thank you everyone for joining. Yeah, so I'm just gonna show a few images here and talk about my work. So give me a second while I figure this out.
I was unmuted, but I said sharing the screen is always the hardest part to do.
Hopefully not too difficult.
No, it's not.
All right, here we go. Let's see. All right. You guys seeing what I'm seeing?
Yes, we see your whole photos.
All right.
Ah, there we go.
So I'm just going to give a little bit of context about myself, a little background. This is my mom in her garden. She loves to garden, and that's her passion. It has been as long as I've been alive, and since before that. My folks live on 20 acres, and this is my mom's garden and the orchard in the back, greenhouse. Grew up close to the land, and you know, always knowing where our food came from was important to our family. There's my dad. He likes to carve. He spent about 40 years running a business that he started making Northwest Coast style carving tools. So he made crooked knives, adzes, and other traditional Northwest Coast style wood carving tools made for carving masks and traditional Northwest Coast art. But the tools really can be used for anything related with wood. So that was his passion. He also likes to fish, so he's an avid fisherman, and he also instilled the, you know, just the love of nature in me in a lot of ways. And being around his studio, I saw a lot of carving and sculpting in kind of more of a reductive way of taking wood away and making something out of it, but it definitely gave me a sense of that you could make something from a block of wood into a beautiful sculpture. So I think that influenced my life and my approach to my artwork. And so also just very important, again, where food comes from and how we get it. So it's a theme that you'll see in my work. This is our smokehouse. And yeah, being Pacific Northwest, it's salmon are always a big part of our lives. And you know, this is an old shot of my brother with a king salmon, but king salmon are endangered here due to overfishing and pollution. Yeah, so I grew up in the Pacific Northwest, and it's a beautiful place to live. We just had the opportunity to drive across the country, go to Penland and do a residency there in North Carolina. And man, the whole country is beautiful. So it was really cool to see different places and the different natural wonders out there. It's a pretty amazing spot we live in. And we often go out on the water and do kind of a semi-annual camping trip out to the outside of Vancouver Island. So this just a few shots of some sea lions and a few of the things we see along the way, just cormorants on a rock, and just a lot of natural beauty, which directly, informs my work. This is a humpback whale feeding on smelt just off the front of my kayak. See wolf tracks on the beach. And just trying to, share that sense of awe and wonder with my own kid, Ren, and just observing nature and also being grateful for the bounty that it gives. Let's see. Oh, I want to try to little video. See if it's. I don't see the play button though. Yeah. There's just some smelt that we catch here on the island.
Beautiful, beautiful, nice house, nice tail.
And that's a fish that comes and spawns right on the shore. So it's a cool activity for the kids. Catch fish and fry them up and eat them. They're delicious. So that's a little bit of my background. This is kind of where I began blowing glass in high school. I worked with an artist, Lark Dalton, and his wife, Corey Height, who live here on Lopez Island. Their main bread and butter is bead tubing. So they would pull bead tubing and chop it up and facet beads and fire polish beads and all things beads. And they've done a lot of really amazing design and development in their work. But also a lot of what Lark and Corey do is rolling up cane in traditional Venetian technique and making vessels and stuff out of cane. And that's a really economic way you can blow glass. If you order the cane already pulled from Moretti or from Ouroboros, you don't need a furnace. You can just roll up cane and blow a vessel without a furnace. So that's kind of where I started. Lark taught me how to make my own glory hole, and I just had a little scut kiln, hexagon kiln for an annealer, and that was my shop. So I did that in high school and after high school for a couple of years. And when I graduated from high school, I went in 2001 and took a class with Davide Salvadore in a little island off of Venice. They had a school there for a couple of years at Studio Centro Vetro, which was on a small island called San Servolo in the lagoon of Venice there. And that was really a fun thing for me. I hadn't really worked furnace glass at all. This is one of Davide's pieces. And so it was just eye-opening, so much amazing, ancestral knowledge there and talent and so many influential people. And I got to meet some really amazing people while I was over there, and people that are inspirational and my work, and just inspirational in the sense of their influence on American studio glass and the history that a lot of us as artists and makers share. So kind of on that same note, Pilchuck is one of those places that if you're a glass worker is kind of a mecca. Everyone wants to make their pilgrimage to Pilchuck at some point, whether it's working on staff or taking a class if you can afford that, or working there or visiting there in some capacity. And I was really fortunate that in 2003 I had met Karen Willenbrink Johnson before 2003 and worked up there a couple days in the winter. Just growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I had friends who were working up there, and so in 2003, Karen invited me to work for her full time, which meant working on Bill Morris's team when she was working for Bill, and then also working for her when she was doing her own work. So that was really a dream come true, and that's what kind of got me into sculptural glass. And that's also where I met Kelly Odell, my wife, who some of you may have seen. I believe she did a talk here a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now. And so we met up there, and yeah, I just started working more sculpturally due to the influences around me, and I felt like I could tell my story a lot more. I love making functional glassware and utilitarian glass, but this was like an avenue that I felt like I could kind of relay my narrative a little bit better. So these are some original pieces, some of the first stuff that I did, and obviously the photo quality is not the best, but just exploring those themes of food and maybe food scarcity and our relation to the natural world and stuff like that. So I was making, like, the fish before was called leftovers. It's just bones in the fish head, and then this is like a filleted salmon. And then I kind of wanted to marry the idea of glass blowing and glass sculpting. So I was making these dinner plates with like a salmon steak and shrimp and some aioli and basil, and yeah, so that was kind of like something I did for a little while, which was really fun. Unfortunately, the shape of a plate being spun out and then having a solid salmon steak attached to it, that just all wanted to crack. So it wasn't something that it was something I tried several times and only a couple ended up working. So it was a fun exercise and a fun kind of way to practice what I was learning in the beginning. And yeah, then this is some more recent work, and I'm just going to kind of go through some of my work, and you can see kind of that evolution from the older work to the more recent work. I'm just fascinated by the biodiversity that's out there and all the different forms there are in nature that just are endless and amazing and beautiful. And glass is such a incredible way to kind of it has an amazing material. It has an amazing way of mimicking other things, and so a lot of what I'm doing is just trying to achieve that surface color pattern texture. And then of course I'm always looking at form and proportion. So
Raven, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Number one is I'd love to know sizes as you're going through your work.
Sure. So that last piece was pretty small. The squid was probably just like maybe 12 inches, 13 inches long. This piece is not huge. It's like 8, maybe it's probably 10 inches, 12 inches long by 8 inches wide and just 5 inches tall. But it is in that sense life size, because it sits on the pedestal, and it just looks like a harbor seal sticking its head out of the water. So it's a fun way that I've kind of discovered to make something life size, because I can't really do that with a lot of my work. Just to kind of put it in that context of it sticking its head out of the water. And I felt like it was a really effective way of kind of representing the seal in its environment. So I actually just made a couple more of these in Penland. I'm going to have one in the show, and Stonington Gallery that I'm having in October. I have an opening there, so I'm just jamming on a bunch of work for that right now. This is a piece I made at Penland, not this time, but a couple years ago when I taught there last, and it's a right whale, and just again studying form and proportion and trying to get that, you know, fluid movement in the work. This piece is going to be in the Pilchuck auction, which is coming up in October as well. I donated this piece to them. It's one of my favorite pieces, but they gave us a residency this year, and I figured I should give them something of note.
A couple of other questions. Number one, I want you to talk about the metalwork, who does that, and the other is I'm fascinated by the fact that the eyes on your animals are shiny. Do you put it? Is it all done hot, or do you come back and glue eyeballs in?
Nope, everything is done hot. So with regards to the eyes, I obviously when the piece comes out of the annealer, it's all shiny, so it's very glassy, and you can see that shine in the squid, and you can see it in some of the other works that I don't sandblast. But all these pieces that are more buff are sandblasted, and then I oil them afterwards. So when I do the sandblasting process, I actually use just a couple coats of Elmer's glue on the eyes, and putting the Elmer's glue on there is basically an effective resist for the sandblasting. So when I blast the piece, it doesn't etch the eye, and it leaves it shiny. So I'm sure you'll see that I give a lot of attention to the eyes and how they look, and that's really important, that they have a lifelike sparkle to them. As far as the stands go, I make all my own stands, so I do all the metal work. These are all TIG welded, so I'm using a small TIG welder to weld all the parts, and every stand is custom fit, obviously, for the individual piece. And I bend everything by hand, so the post you see there is bent by hand, and everything is bent without heating it. I just bend it cold, so that gives it more tensile strength and more spring, and if you heat it up, it makes the metal soft and more likely.
Question about the kind of oil. We have a question about the kind of oil you use.
Yeah, so a good finish on a piece is kind of like the holy grail. It's really hard to find a product that's satisfactory. So I have been using 511 seal by Miracle Sealants, and it's basically a mortar and tile sealant for masonry. Some people use liquid luster, which is made for the glass industry, and I'm thinking about trying that again. I've tried it before. You know, on these larger pieces, it's hard to get a really even surface. So you might be able to see a couple streaks near the eye of the oil application. But I try my hardest to buff it in and then reapply it. It's always a bit of a difficulty to get a really nice finished surface on the sandblasted work. Another thing that people do is acid etching, and I used to do that. That's what Bill did on a lot of his work, but the byproduct is just you know, a lot of toxic stuff, and I don't really like working with the acid. You have to wear so much gear, and then you neutralize it with baking soda afterwards, but it's still this kind of toxic sludge, so I just prefer not to use that. When you use acid, you don't have to do any sort of oil finish. It's the glass is etched softly. This piece is not that big. It's probably about 20 inches long, but it's solid. So I just really like how the light is captured and then kind of transmitted through the work. I did like a blow through on this piece, so you can see the color fade from blue to almost clear. And I just, the glass blower in me always likes to exploit the optical quality of glass when it's possible. A lot of times I do powder on the surface, and then, you know, it's more going for a hyper realistic approach, but I really like also just playing with light and color too. This piece is called Entangle. It's just a commentary on all the whales that are caught in fishing gear every year. They estimate that 300,000 cetaceans are killed by fishing gear every year. So that's crab pots, lobster pots, and ghost nets and other things like that. So it was just kind of a statement on that. It's kind of a sad whale. It's been a hard sell, but it's one of my personal favorites. So I have it in my collection. And
Raven, I want you to tell me what a blow through is, because I've not heard that term before.
oh yeah, so I sometimes I slip into glass blowing vernacular because it's what I know and it's the easiest thing, but I do forget that people maybe don't understand the technical terminology. The blow through is basically, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the glass blowing process, but a lot of times when you make a bubble, every piece starts as a bubble if it's blown. You're going to add color on top of the bubble, which is in a color bar form. So you do what's called an overlay, and you put color on top of the bubble, and then basically what we do is take another gather of clear glass over that color and leave a lot of clear glass off the tip of the bubble, and then blow the bubble through the color so that the color is really dense up by the pipe and really thin up by the tip of the bubble, and that creates this gradient effect of color. So I'm not sure if that's easy enough to visualize, but that is what we do for a blow through. And then out of that blow through, you make what's called a color cup. So that's basically just your color setup, and then you take and you stuff the main mass of glass inside of that, so your color is on the exterior, and you make the form out of it. So it's a complicated process, but it's something that we do a lot. And this is just an image of that sea turtle. This is actually not the sea turtle that we made at Corning, but a similar one. Here you can see the color setup. So this is on the pipe, obviously, and the interior color is this kind of it's called ivory. So it's Kugler 160 color on the interior, and so that's the interior color, and then the exterior color is this brownish green that I've powdered onto the surface. So the powder is just right on the surface of the glass, and that's important. You'll see in the next photo. Oh, this is the photo of the making of the large sea turtle at Corning for the 2016 gas conference demo, and there you see Martin Yaneski on the pipe helping me. So the challenge the sea turtle presents is that you know, you're always limited by the size of the piece you can make, by the depth of the glory hole and the width of the glory hole. So the sea turtle is not extremely long, but it is extremely wide with the pectoral fins sticking out. So that's where you end up what we call maxing out the glory hole in a hurry. So once the glory hole is maxed out and all the doors are open, which you can see they are in this shot, you can't make the piece any bigger. And so this glory hole has, what is that, 8 doors, and they are all open. And that is, so there's pretty much 2 shops in the world where we can make a piece of this scale, and that's either Corning Museum of Glass in New York or the Museum of Glass Tacoma. And so tried to do this a few times. this piece we made for the Corning Museum of Glass was kind of a moonshot. I made all the individual parts and then shipped them to Corning, and then we picked up all the individual parts and put them together. So I like this shot just because it shows, and this is not everyone that was on the floor, but it just shows kind of the collective intention it takes to make a piece, and everyone's kind of gathered there at the pipe cooler. And I'm gonna just show a quick, as well, it's not that quick, but as a 8-minute video of just kind of edited process of the making of the sea turtles. So this is at the Museum of Glass Tacoma where we made this piece. And again, this is an edited version, so it takes a lot longer than 8 minutes to put this together. Also, all the individual pieces are really what takes the time. So this is the assembly of the piece, but again, the head, the 4 flippers, the tail, and the shell are all made ahead of time and then patterned and textured with sandblaster and carved. So there's all the work, or the lion's share of the work is done ahead of time. And here we're picking up the turtle shell. So I stuffed the soft body of the turtle inside of the shell. And you can see the pattern on the shell. So it's already been carved. And once I stuff the body in there, that gives me something to attach the other parts to. Otherwise, it would just be an empty shell, obviously. There you can see we had 2 heads in there, one to back up. And so it's a complicated process. You stab the shell, then we're adding this first punty. And so we can work on the front of the turtle.
All right. Flipping. Flip again, sir. Stay in. All right, I'm good.
And then once we've punted it here and put the head on, punty it a second time so that we can finish up the back end of the turtle. So
if you can heat it to about here. Yeah, and I have a little movement when I stick it on there to keep that neck around. Yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
So as the scale and complexity of a piece increase, the more help, the better. So I think there was 10 of us working on this piece, doing a lot of just managing the heat with the torches. For some reason, it stopped playing. There we go. And we have several people on the pipe because it's extremely heavy. So they're just trying to, save each other, get hurt. There you see there's 4 people working on
Yours? Yeah.
catching that piece of honey. So that's the final punny, and then we're gonna assemble it.
Nice punchy man.
Raven, even Eva Klein wants to know, how much does this turtle weigh?
This is probably about 40 pounds, which is maybe doesn't sound like a crazy amount of weight, but really in glass, that's a lot of weight, because you have to imagine that it's 40 pounds moving around on the end of a 6-foot long stick. So so it's heavy, and I think, I don't know what the equation is exactly, but every foot you get away from your fulcrum, which is the highest point, the closest point you can grab the pipe from, the weight increases exponentially. So it's, the perceived weight. So it's a lot to move around, and it's very fragile. So it takes a lot of concentration. Part of the person is turning the pipe, which here is bent off.
So stay here. Right. Yep.
We're constantly torching all the different parts of the turtle, just so that none of those sharp edges or small points cool down too fast and crack. We're also torching the minty so it doesn't cool down and crack. So it's a lot of heat management.
Sorry. Go. Beauty.
Oh, does that whole turtle with its flippers fit into the glory hole?
It does, yeah. It's just barely. I don't know why it keeps stopping playing. Sorry, bear with me. See if... So here you can see all the doors are open, and you got about an inch on either side.
A lot of room for things to happen, huh?
No, there's not a lot of room for air there.
This turtle now, Raven.
30.
This is the turtle that's at this is the turtle that's at habitat right now.
Squeeze, Sasha, lift. Take it. You're good. Good.
How long did that turtle take to anneal?
That I think we put on like a 48-hour annealing cycle. So it's really thick and it's really heavy. But the nice thing about making something in hot glass is it's not like a casting. So a casting, a piece that size would probably take, I don't know, at least a week to anneal. But but as you're heating it, you're kind of cooling it down to annealing temperature as you're flashing it and working it. So once it's fine, once the final assembly is complete, you're kind of flashing, we call it flashing it down, which is bringing it evening everything out and bringing it kind of down to around the 900-degree mark, which is where we start our annealing at. So you can get away with most things, most everything we make, we anneal for 24 hours, which is standard. That's what Bill Morris did for all of his work, 24-hour annealing cycle. But with these bigger, thicker things, and like the head is solid and stuff, then we add some time for sure. And so what I was trying to explain earlier when I showed the picture of the turtle's head in the hot shop was just that color setup. Now you can see here that it's been sandblasted. So I take each individual, so the negative space is where the adhesive sticker is not. Between those adhesive stickers is where we blast away. So I basically take a X-Acto knife and I cut out each individual plate to make that reptilian kind of scale look, and I stick it on like a jigsaw puzzle. So you can just imagine how long that takes to do each one of those fins in the head and then the shell. So there's a lot of time invested before you even get into the hot shop and start assembling it. And here is a clam. And this is kind of an understated piece, but something that I really like. It's, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the technique. If you guys have seen Lino's work, he does what's called a plunger pickup. So instead of the canes in the piece wrapping around the vessel, it kind of falls down like a hammock held in the middle and bending. And so I use that technique for the cane on this piece. You can see the lines are moving concentrically, like towards the lip of the shell. And then I carved the lip of the shell where the hinge is hot. So I carved that in with the taglio in the hot shop. And then the rest is the texture on the piece is carved in the cold shop with V wheel, diamond wheel. You can see the terminus of the cuts there. You can see that V shape of the profile of the wheel. But it's just really effective how it kind of bends the light, and it also bends the bending of the light makes the cane underneath of it look irregular and bent, but it's not. It's just a straight curve there. So again, just the optical quality of glass is fascinating. This is a mother and calf piece that I did. This is an older piece. I think it's from like 2016 maybe. But this piece is in the Museum of Indian Art and Culture in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now. They have a great show on currently called Clearly Indigenous, and it's all Native artists and their work. I'm not sure how many artists there are in it, but there's several people who are friends, and
There are 28.
what's that?
28.
28. Yeah, that's a lot. So so several of the people I don't know, but some of the people are good friends, and some of the work is collaborative. So we have a couple collaborative I have a collaborative piece in there with Preston Singletary, and I also have a piece that I worked on with Marvin Oliver, the late great Marvin Oliver. I'm not sure if any of you know his work, but I got a chance to work with him some, and he's really a dynamic person. It was cool to be able to work with him.
And that show will be on through part of 2022 as well, just FYI. This is Linda in Santa Fe.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. Your work is gorgeous.
So this piece is also in that show. And yeah, I mean, a lot of what I do is native species to the Pacific Northwest, but again, I'm just fascinated with biodiversity and the challenge of trying to capture some motion and the amazing colors you find in nature, and it's just a endless well of inspiration. So I've been down to Mexico when they're throwing these mahi mahi in the back of a truck to take them and sell them and make fish tacos out of. They're delicious, but it's also just a beautiful life form that is endlessly fascinating. So I used a dichroic glass on this, and when I was talking earlier about a color cup, so the color cup is the exterior color. So basically I made the green and yellow kind of earth tone you see on a bubble, and then I stuffed it inside of a cup that was made out of dichroic glass, so that you can see the dichroic is the shiny, shimmery color on the exterior. And these fish, when they're in the water, when you pull them out of the water, they lose their color really fast. But when they're in the water, they have this crazy color shift, and they're really amazing. And so I just wanted to include a little moving shot of this. You can kind of see how those colors in the dichroic change as you pass by it. So those lines shift and pick up the light in a different way. So it just makes it seem really alive when you walk past it and there's light on it. I found that to be really effective. And yeah, so that challenge is always a good one for me. Trying to, again, look at form, proportion, and then I often play with the colors, but like in a lot of these cases, I'm trying to make a realistic representation of the creature that I'm trying to mimic. And so this is another large scale piece. I made this at Pratt Fine Arts in Seattle. This piece I glued the teeth in afterwards, and they're carved glass, but I glued them in. There's no way to really get that really sharp, toothy look. It would just look like it was wearing dentures if I had made it in the hot shop, because they would just melt back and round out. So I'm not a purist. I'll use glue if it makes the piece better in the end. I think that there's nothing wrong with that, and it's something that I enjoy, just trying to problem solve wherever I can. So it's just a really quick shot of that piece in the hot shot.
How much does this one weigh, Raven?
And so you can just, I threw this in just for a sense of scale. A lot of my work is larger scale as far as glass goes, and I like to play with scale a lot. Of I make very small things as well. I just like the interplay between the viewer and the piece. If the scale is larger, it definitely has more of an impact in a lot of ways, especially if it's something like this apex predator.
What does that weigh, that shark?
That's probably I don't know, 35 pounds or something. It's a massive piece, but it's the fins are solid and the body is blown. So the body is probably like, I try to make my work thick enough that it's not going to collapse under its own weight when it's hot and fluid, liquid kind of, and not so thick that we don't have to have extra weight on the pipe. So so the front where the nose is really thick, because that's kind of how you set the bubble up, and you don't want it too thin up there because you're going to put the punny on that while you finish the piece and put all the fins on. But the rest of it is blown probably 1/4 inch thick or a little bit less maybe. So you know, you're trying to make it as thin as you can within reason. Sculpture you definitely want to keep on the thicker side just because you can push it and pull it easier, but still don't want to carry any extra weight around. You don't have to. And this is just kind of a more fantastical representation. Again, playing with color and form. Oop, double tap there. And a lot of these animals I've encountered and some of them I haven't, but thinking about the people in northern regions that subsist on these animals, and also the animals' dependence on sea ice to birth, and all the different factors that either imposed by nature or inadvertently by ourselves that affect these creatures is always a theme in my mind when making them. This is kind of a variation on Moby Dick. Feister macrocephalus. My buttons are lagging a little bit. And this is a piece that is solid, so it's very heavy, but it's not huge. It's probably 36 inches long or something like that, which is decent size. But again, I'm trying to nail the form and the color, and this piece is nice because it has the green bumps on it are kind of like tactile. Like if you touch it with your fingers, it's actually like bumpy to the touch, which is fun. And
How do you do that? Because I also noticed on the narwhal there were bumps on it.
yeah, so I mean that's a really like common thing you'll see in a lot of glass is just frit. What Chihuly uses a lot of frit, which is basically crushed up colored glass. That's you can buy glass in a few different forms. Basically, it's all you can buy the same color in several different forms. So the color can come in bar, which is a solid chunk of colored bar that you use for an overlay, or you can use frit, which is crushed up into different sizes. So it's basically like they number the frit and the biggest down to 00. So this is a larger frit. And this I actually just made by cutting the color bar into water and having it fracture itself. So that way I get a variation of sizes and I don't have just one size of frit. Because when you buy it, you usually buy one size or the other size. And I suppose you could buy those and mix them together. But that way I just get this natural variation in the frit size. And so when I add that, I have into the base color, which is green, and then I add a green on top of that, and then I actually powder a third green into the frit, and you can kind of see it in between the frit there. There's a different variation in the green, and so I'm just layering color on color on color to get this like depth of texture. And a lot of times, the one green is a little stiffer than the other green, and that's where you get the frit stays a little bit raised, and you get this kind of scaly effect on the surface of the glass. This piece is just like 3 by 4 by 5 inches. Tiny little tree frog. Like I said, I like to make small things as well. And then I think that a lot of my work, you know, I gravitated towards the marine environment because I grew up on an island and on and around the ocean, but I also, you know, feel like the medium of glass really lends itself to the fluidity of the creatures that are in that marine environment. So I really focus on trying to capture a sense of motion in my work and this dynamicism, because it is like a static object, you know, it's a piece of hard glass that's sitting on a stand. So if I can put some hint of life or some gesture or motion into it, that's kind of when I feel like I've really nailed the piece and gotten it right, because otherwise it just looks flat or dead, you know. And so that's kind of what I strive for when I'm trying to create something. I want to make something that's gonna, you know, captivate the viewer and kind of have this hint of life. And that's another reason I focus on the eyes so much. It's kind of like the eyes are the window to the soul. It's something that draws you in, you know. On these whales, it can be such a tiny little thing, but if it has that little sparkle in it, then it becomes much more alive. And also how I make the stands, you know, again, if you look at the piece just laying on a table, it's not at all the same as if you see it in a stand. So here's the salmon. The salmon was such and still is a huge huge source of nourishment, and also a spiritual kind of creature in the Northwest Coast Native people's lives. And it's always something that that has always been revered. And so I just try to honor the salmon in my work a lot. I've done quite a few salmon. They're a super difficult piece to make. This you can see is silver foil. So I make the color on the bubble, and then I cover the whole bubble with a silver foil, which is actual pure silver. And it looks kind of like tin foil, but it's a little thinner. And when you get it hot and you stretch the bubble out, that silver separates, and it really gives a nice scaly effect. Here's another salmon. This one's carved out of red cedar, so and it has glass eyes that I made. But I don't work strictly in the medium of glass. I like to carve sometimes as well. This piece is one of the more recent pieces that I made. You know, during COVID, most of the shops that we were able to access were shut down because there's not really any great way to socially distance when blowing glass, because we all blow on the pipe and you have to hold on to the blowpipe and stand next to each other, and there's just no way of socially distancing. So all the public access studios that we worked in were closed, and there was a couple things that I was able to do during COVID in the hot shop, but mostly not. So, and we had other projects going on, which I'll talk about here in a minute, but getting close to the end here, just wanted to show this piece. It was a good exercise in patience. Glass is so immediate in the sense that you can't put it down and walk away from it. But it also, when you're done, it's pretty much a finished piece, whereas this took a really long time. You can put it down and walk away from it, but you have to come back to it to finish it. So that was a good exercise. this shot is from Czech Republic. These are all the burnt out molds from the glass studio. And just being a glass artist has offered me and my wife Kelly an opportunity to travel the world, which is really cool. You know, teaching and doing residencies is really gives back in a lot of ways. It's not a great way to make money, but it has afforded us the opportunity to see the world, and it's a labor of love in a lot of ways, and it's always fun to pass on whatever knowledge we can impart to others. So yeah, this is Czech Republic. It's really cool to see how the Czech style of glass work. They've been doing it there for a long time. They definitely know how to blow some glass. Got to teach a class in Turkey and just outside of Istanbul. Went and did a residency in Biot, France, and had a really great experience there, and got to teach in Japan a couple times. Very attentive students in Japan, and it's really fun to go other places and meet other people in different cultures. And you know, we may not speak the same language, but we speak the same language of glass. And glass is kind of this thing where if it has certain steps and there's kind of a way to work it, and a lot of people, you don't have to speak the same language. You can show up and make something together. So it's really cool in that regard. And this is Denmark. The students were pretty attentive in Denmark too, and super fun to travel and see new places and meet new people. This is my wife Kelly's work. You may have seen it if you were on the talk with her a couple months back, but I just threw a couple in there so you could see some of her work. These are hot cast. The elements are worked in the hot shop and then cut in half and butterflied and cold worked, and then cast into a brick of solid clear glass and picked up and worked in the hot shop. So it's a pretty cool process and something different. And this is another piece of hers, the Ammonite, and you can see the kind of spiral form in her shells. Another similar but different piece with this extinct animal, and then it has kind of these kelp coming out of it, which I don't know, is kind of conjures the idea of an animal, but also just this organic plant life. It's really interesting. And so in that regard, we've joined forces and made collaborative work together. And here you can see, I might have put these out of order, or I might have missed a slide, but you can see I made the soft tentacles and the eye, and then we put it together with her shell form to make this nautilus. And yeah, so this has been really cool, and I really enjoy collaborating. Collaborations are just a great way to kind of step outside of your own practice and make something that's completely different, something you wouldn't have made on your own. And it's always really rewarding and gratifying to see the end product of a collaboration. This is another collaborative piece I did with Kelly Odell, and I made the hermit crab body parts and the eyes, and she made the shell. We put them together, and this piece has some copper inclusions too for the antenna. There's not really a great way to make that in glass without having it super fragile. So we use copper, which is compatible with glass usually. So the copper actually we stick into the glass hot, and it sticks in there and stays there. So it's a fun little detail. This is another collaborative piece I made with my friend Matthew Grodet, and he he works in the hot shop. He's a flame worker. He does marini, and his work is very very labor intensive and time consuming, and that's just matches his personality, I guess. And so this work is I made the Beluga Whale, and then he did glass enamel on the surface of the Beluga Whale. So it's once it's painted and then fired, it's all actually one piece of glass. So it's the glass enamel is fused to the piece of glass that I made, and it becomes one piece of glass, which I really like that concept. And this is supposed to just be kind of a commentary on human folly and our addiction to oil and human nature, and maybe some of the darker sides of that. And it's not meant to be like a tattooed whale. It's kind of the human experience kind of superimposed onto the whale. So it's that's the concept behind it. And we're going to do another collaborative piece here soon, so excited about that. This is a collaborative piece I made with Mark Petrovic, and when I was teaching out at the Cleveland Institute of Art, and I made the branch and the flowers, and then he made the little wren bird. It's really fun. And lately I've been doing collaborations with Preston Singletary, and this shot is in Benjamin Moore's studio, who just passed away. Rest in peace, Benjamin Moore. We'll miss him a lot, but I just threw this shot in of us working together because we've been doing some collaborative works lately, and I've really enjoyed the synergy of our work as kind of, you know, taking his aesthetic and the craft he's refined of form line design, and taking his artwork and superimposing it onto my sea life forms is just a really beautiful way, I think, of kind of putting the native into the native species. And I'm really really happy with how this work's been turning out. So I just thought I'd show a couple images of these pieces. This is a little bit older piece, but that was one thing that during COVID was really beneficial for us, is that Preston has his own private studio. And so over this last year, I was able to go down and work with him 2 days a month-ish, and we made a body of work. So this is a more recent piece. This and the next couple pieces are actually at the Blue Rain Gallery right now in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And yeah, it's just really enjoying playing with the color and transparency, and just trying things that are maybe a little bit outside of my normal general kind of aesthetic. And Preston's helped push me in new directions and trying new things, which is always good to shake up your reality a little bit. I really like this piece. It's kind of a whale rider with you got the human figure on both sides, and then the head is kind of on the top center where the blowhole is. So it's really cool design, and the fact that he's just able to work these form line designs over a 3-dimensional form is pretty amazing what he's able to do with that. So
All of these at Blue Rain Gallery right now?
yes, yep. This piece, the killer whale, the shark, and then the bowhead whale are all at Blue Rain currently. And then we're also, I mentioned that I have a show at the Stonington Gallery in October, and not these pieces, but a couple other collaborative pieces will be in the Stonington Gallery show opening October 7th too. So so I don't know if anyone's going to be out for the Pilchuck auction or Refract in Seattle or any of that, but if you are, it might be an opportunity to see some of the work in person. And lastly, this is just speaking of studio access and the ability to work, and the fact that that's been hampered. This has been our big project that we're doing over the past couple of years, is building a studio of our own. So we added on to an existing studio shop and built the hot shop glass studio off that. So it's a project that took us a couple of years, and this is kind of the beginning of it, and we finally finished it. So I just thought I'd throw in a couple shots of it being built. Here you can see the metal roof is where the existing building was, and then the addition is what we built onto it. So it's the main space is 39 by 32, so it's a large shop, and then we have this other little addition here is the sandblasting room that you see off on the left hand side of the screen. And it was just really a cool process to learn more about building. My brother-in-law, you see on the left there, Jaime, he is a really amazing builder. And so Kelly and Jaime and I built the whole studio. So we did all the framing, all the metal work, all the woodwork, and I think we hired out just the electrical work and the insulation. We hung all the drywall and did everything ourselves. So it was a huge learning process and a big project, but we just started blowing glass in it this spring. So we lit it up for a month and worked for a month, and then we had a couple residencies this summer and stuff. So we turned it off, but we're about to turn it back on here in October. So that's our major accomplishment. And we did a Kickstarter to help us fund the project of building the building. And it didn't cover all the costs by any means, but it was a huge leg up for us. So we're just super grateful to all the people who donated to the cause and who supported us in building this. And this is Kelly and Ren and I. And that, I believe, concludes my slideshow. So I don't know if anyone wants to talk Q&A or anything. I probably have a couple of minutes.
Any questions, just unmute yourself and ask a question if you'd like to. We'll give it a minute to let people unmute themselves and see if we have any questions. Raven, this was fabulous. Your work is just wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, thanks for inviting me to be a part of this. It's fun to share something with the broader community. And I just, it's kind of a strange medium to be in for me, because I'm much more like to be in person, but it's really cool that this has worked out to just be a way to share and get in front of more people, because I don't know, it's a hard thing to do, and we've been pretty hunkered down here, so grateful for this.
Well, I don't hear any questions, so I'm going to stop the recording.